Howdy partners, this is Worm here, back with the hat because we are on another Tex Mechanica weapon for our exotic recrafting series. The series where we take a look at exotics that are underused, weak, or straight up bad in Destiny 2 and talk about what they do and how we can potentially make them better. And today we have Dead Man's Tale on the menu. Of course, last week we did Huckleberry, so I figured might as well continue on with Tex Mechanica weapons because I really like the theme of these weapons. And Dead Man's Tale, I absolutely love Dead Man's Tale. I love the idea that it's a lever action rifle that it can rechamber 2 rounds at a time. It's got that really unique reload. You know, it's not a magazine. It's literally you're popping shells, and I think that that's such a cool reload. I think that the whole aesthetic of the weapon is fantastic, but let's be honest with ourselves, it's not very good. It is not very good, and I think it falls in that weak category, you know, that we talked about just a second ago. It's not necessarily underused. It's not bad by any means, but it's just really weak, and I think that the weakness comes from a series of nerfs. So let's go ahead and talk about its history a little bit. Of course, Dead Man's Tale came out in, I want to say it was season 13 or 14, somewhere back there, and it was a menace. It was an absolute menace because its exotic perk, Cranial Spike, basically states that landing precision hits increases target acquisition and damage, and it also, when it first launched, it had the ability to hip fire at 180 rounds per minute, and then it had a catalyst on top of that that removed all hip fire penalties, which made it an absolute freaking beast of a weapon. So imagine, you know, you're running around with a 180 round per minute scout that can 3-tap permanently, that you don't even have to ADS for. You literally just hold your reticle over a target and it will just magically snag crits for you. That was Dead Man's Tale, and it was an absolute menace because everybody and their mom was using it, and its range was absolutely bonkers. I mean, we're talking 50 meters away, somebody could hip fire you 3 crits and you're done. It was absolutely insane. So Bungie, of course, figured they needed to nerf it, so they tuned the range down on the hip fire, aim assist, and stuff like that. Gave it kind of a drop-off point, but it was still incredibly powerful. So they just finally ended up reworking the whole weapon so that now it fires at 120 rounds per minute until you get to ×5 on Cranial Spike. Once you hit ×5 Cranial Spike, then it will fire at 180 rounds per minute, and it only does that when you are hip firing. And it knocked this weapon down a lot. I mean, it knocked this weapon down a ton, and it's really unfortunate because it's such a cool weapon. Of course, it's also craftable, and that's something that's very important to note here. Currently, you can get it with a lot of different neat PvE roles, things like Outlaw, 4 times a charm. I've got the perks up over here, that's what I'm looking at. Outlaw, 4 times a charm, Compulsive Reloader, I know is a pretty decent one, Vorpal, things like that. But still, even though it's craftable, even though it is, you know, it has a really, the idea behind it is really neat, it's just not used very much. And so I figured we'd talk about how we can bring it back to its, maybe not quite its former glory, but bring it back to a point where it's more viable inside of today's meta. And the first idea that I had is with the whole fire rate change. So like I said, currently it fires at 120 rounds per minute until you hit ×5 on Cranial Spike. I don't like this. I never have liked this. I think that this weapon should be a weapon that when you're firing from the hip, you can shoot faster. I think that's one of the biggest things they can do to revert it back to a better state is just removing this whole ×5, you get a faster fire. Like, just give it, when you're hip firing, give it the ability to fire at 180 rounds per minute. When you ADS, that's whenever it starts firing at 120 rounds per minute. Then, not only that, but once you hit ×5 Cranial Spikes, even when you're ADSing, you should also be able to fire at 180 rounds per minute, because again, in the Crucible, how often are we really getting to ×5 stacks of Cranial Spike? Like, it's very rare. Like, when I play with Dead Man's Tale inside of PvP, it's very rare that I get to ×5, and typically by the time I get to ×5 stacks, there's not really any enemies around that I can use it, because it has I think like a 7.5 second duration, which is not very much at all. So I think just increasing the fire rate to make it a more more consistent across the board. That's the word I'm looking for here. When you're hip firing, it's 180. When you're ADSing, it's 120. And then of course you get that power spike. Once you hit ×5, it would boost it in PvE, it would boost it in PvP, but I don't think that it would make it super OP in PvP, because that's really where the nerfs that this weapon received were coming from, was from the PvP side of it. Of course, when you're hip firing, You know, it's been nerfed so that when you're hip firing, it's not as good as it once was. I think now outside of 20 or 21 meters, your hip fire stickiness drops off. And so SMGs like Immortal, Unending Tempest, stuff like that can now just absolutely beam you, because they can sit outside of that 20 meter range, and you can try to hip fire, but still you're only hip firing 120 rounds per minute. So might as well give people an opportunity to kill quickly like that. But another idea that I had for the weapon is increasing or giving it another perk. So most exotics, they have their intrinsic perk and then they have an exotic perk on top of it. And Dead Man's Tale doesn't have that. Now I think that Dead Man's Tale, it did sacrifice having that additional perk, that unique perk, so to speak, for having random rolls that you can choose from. But I think that having an additional perk that maybe increased stickiness after a kill, or increased hipfire stickiness after a kill, would also be beneficial to this weapon. This weapon to me is not to me, it is a chaining weapon. It wants you to chain shots. It wants you to chain kills. In fact, I'm looking at the perk here, Cranial Spike, and it literally says chaining precision hits grants bonus target acquisition and range. So it wants you to chain kills together and stuff like that. So why not make it better, like even better at chaining kills? Like, yes, Cranial Spike can help you out, but it's not helping you until you get to like 3 or not 3, I think like 4 or 5 stacks. And even at 5 stacks, I don't think it can 2-tap without some type of buff, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's probably a good thing. You know, because every now and then somebody's going to get 2-tapped and they're going to have a conniption, blah, blah, blah about Dead Man's Tale. But if it wants you to chain, it should help you chain more. And I think that on top of Cranial Spike, like having another perk, or just including it in Cranial Spike, give it even more aim assistance when hip firing. That way, as you're chaining kills, you have that 180 round per minute. You're also getting more and more accurate. Maybe it's increasing the range which you can hit those. You know, it drops off at 20 meters at base, but as you get, you know, times 1 stack of Cranial Spike, it goes to 21 meters, and then 22 meters, and 24, and then maybe at times 5 it's out to like 30 meters, and it's just making it a lot more sticky. It's increasing that hip fire angle, so to speak, by a pretty substantial margin. That way you're just hitting crits, and as long as you can keep feeding the weapon, you can keep going. I think that would be a really interesting change to see. You could also, like, another idea that I had would be a alternate fire mode. You have hip fire, you have ADS. You know, what if they added another mode that like just completely destroyed your hip fire ability, like your hip fire accuracy and stuff? Maybe not completely destroyed, but it brought it down a lot. But you could start blasting out, like you could fire at like 260 rounds per minute, right? So, you know, you click and hold X and it does some neat animation, and then all of a sudden your hip fire reticle is a lot bigger. It's harder to hit shots, but you're now firing 260 rounds per minute, like pa 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 pa. I think that would be super cool. You could, you know, run out of ammo really quick, then you gotta go back. It would be beneficial for up close and personal play, but you know, playing at range, this special reload wouldn't work quite as well. And I think in PvE, it would be cool because, you know, lots of people that use Dead Man's Tale, they want to sit back with it and just ADS and, you know, okay, we're going to pick it off. Like, give it that utility in PvE to use up close and personal. And doing that, giving it this alternate fire mode that fires at like 260 round per minute with just really bad hip fire accuracy could be a way that they could do that. You could also have a very unique perk where getting kills while hip fire increases your damage resistance to up to ×5 or something like that. That way, as you're down there in a Grandmaster Nightfall and you're in the fray with all the enemies and stuff, as you're getting kills, you're getting more damage resistance. They could even maybe add a healing aspect on it, similar to like Touch of Malice or Unrelenting, so that as you're getting kills, you know, you're healing, you have more damage resistance, but you have to consistently stay hip firing to keep that damage boost up, or consistently get hip fire kills, I should say. But yeah, I mean, I think that Dead Man's Tale is such a cool perk idea, or it's a cool exotic idea, but it's been hit one too many times with nerfs, and it's not where it used to be. And I'm looking at the perks here, and the perks, besides maybe like Outlaw for PvE, maybe 4 times a charm, they don't, nothing really screams excitement to me. Give it perks like Firefly, which would be really awesome to see on this. Give it perks like kinetic trimmers maybe. It's a kinetic weapon, which that in and of itself is a setback to the weapon, but this video isn't talking about kinetic weapons. But give it kinetic trimmers, give it firefly, give it some more really cool weapons in that perk column. There's another change I think that they could do. They give it rampage, they could give it, you know, adrenaline junkie, they could give it this, that, and the other, just to increase its damage even more on top of cranial spike, so that it feels really good to use and it feels warranted to use. It doesn't feel like you're putting yourself kind of at a slow pace disadvantage. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Dead Man's Tale. Like, it's a super cool gun, it's got a neat idea behind it, but I want to see it be better, I want to see it get better, and these are my ideas how we can make that happen. Of course, I want to hear your thoughts on my thoughts and your thoughts on how you could potentially make Dead Man's Tale better. Leave them down in the comment section below. Of course, if you liked today's video, drop a like, helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content such as this, and do me a favor, watch the videos you see on the end screen here, because for whatever reason YouTube thinks you will like them. I'll see y'all next time, guys. Bye for now.